On January 1st, 2009, Instaform Inc. issued 10% bonds with a face amount of $50 million, dated January 1st. The bonds mature in 2028 in 20 years. The market yield for bonds of similar risk and maturity is 12%. Interest is paid semi-annually. Okay, we've got a number of requirements. First, determine the price of the bonds at January 1st, 2009 and prepare the journal entry to record their issuance by Instaform. Second, assume the market rate was 9% and determine the price of the bonds at January 1st, 2009 and prepare the journal entry to record the issuance by Instaform. And third, assume Broadcourt Electronics purchased the entire issue in a private placement of the bonds. Using the data in Requirement 2, prepare the journal entry to record their purchase by Broadcourt. Okay, let's take a look at how we would determine the first requirement, which would be determine the price of the bonds at January 1st, 2009 and prepare the journal entries to record the issuance. So let's determine the price of the bonds first. And I've worked a little bit of this ahead of time just to save some time. Let's bring it into light. Okay, the face amount of the bonds was given as $50 million. The number of periods would be 20-year bonds paying interest semi-annually, so we've got 40 periods. Okay, the contract rate on the bonds is given as 10%. Keep in mind that's an annual rate, so the contract rate on a periodic basis would be 10% divided by 2, or 5%. Now the market rate on the bonds is given as 12%, and again, the periodic market rate would be the 12% annual rate divided by 2 since interest is paid semi-annually, which would be 6%. Okay, then we need to calculate the periodic interest payments. And how I do this, let me hit the F2 key so you can see it. We take the face amount of the bonds times the contract rate divided by 2 to come up with the periodic interest rate per period. And that comes out to be $2,500,000. Okay, and then the last thing we need to do is solve for the present value of the bonds. And we do that using the present value formula. Now let me hit the F2 so you can see the function and see how I do that. Okay, the rate was given in cell B12, with the 12% divided by 2. The number of periods was given in cell B10, it's 40. The payment, I'm entering it as a negative so that we have all the cash outflows showing in one direction and the cash inflows showing in the other direction. Now you could reverse the order and then the end result would be a result that gives you a negative number, but I like seeing the answer as a positive number. So we'll assume that we're making interest payments of $2,500,000 every period. The future value of the bonds, the amount we would have to then pay back, is $50 million, which is the face value of the bonds. And once we put all that information in, we can hit the OK, and it calculates the present value of the bonds as $42,476,852. Okay, you see on the screen the solution that we just solved, where we calculated the present value of the bonds to be about $42,477,000, that's rounded, at a market rate of 12%. If you look on the bottom of the image, you'll see the journal entry that we'd need to make. We would debit cash for the present value of the bonds, that would be the cash proceeds we would receive. We'd record a discount of $7,523,000 in spare change, and a credit to bonds payable of $50 million. Okay, next we'll tackle the second requirement, which is assume the market rate was 9%. And the answer you have on the screen is the answer to the first requirement when the market rate was 12%. So the only thing we need to change is this number right here. We change that 12% to 9%. Everything will calculate just fine. And down here, as you watch the $42,476,000, as soon as I hit enter, that will switch to $54,600,396. And I'll go ahead and hit the F2, and you can see where the formula is coming up, but I want to hit the formula bar here, the little insert function, so we can get the pop-up screen. And you'll see that the only thing we changed was the rate. The rate went from a 9% divided by 2 to 4.5%, and everything else in the problem remains the same. 40 periods, the payment. Okay, now you see the solution that we just solved previously, where we've calculated the present value of the bonds to be $54,600,000 and spare change when the market rate was at 9%. If you look to the bottom of the image, you'll see the journal entry that we would need to make to record the bond proceeds if indeed they were issued at a market rate of 9%. So the cash proceeds would be the $54,600,396. The bonds payable would be written on the books with a credit to bonds payable at the $50 million contract amount, and the difference would show up as a premium on bonds payable with a credit of $4,600,396. Okay, the third requirement says, assume Broadcourt Electronics purchased the entire issue in a private placement of the bonds, and use the data in requirement 2, which means we're assuming the market rate on the bonds was 9%. Okay, well, we've got the solution in front of us at the top, and on the bottom of the image you'll see how Broadcourt Electronics would record the investment in bonds. They would debit investment in bonds for $50 million. They would debit premium on bond investment for the difference between the present value of the bonds and the face value. So that's $4,600,396. And then they need to record the consideration given for the investment, which was a credit to cash of $54,600,396.